Chances are you're like me. You've been through some tough, even traumatic experiences in your life. And if there's something deep inside that bothers you, something you try to suppress, but every now and then it creeps back in, and when it does, it makes you feel bad, maybe even disappointed in yourself. But here's the thing, you don't have to live like this anymore. If you feel stuck in guilt, regret, or shame, if you find yourself unable to move forward in life, there's one thing you need to do right now, and that's forgive yourself. Our society spends so much time emphasizing the importance of forgiving others. We hear messages like forgive and forget, holding on to anger is like drinking poison, and everyone deserves a second chance. But think about this. Why don't we talk about giving that same grace to ourselves? Well, today we're going to change that. I'm going to show you how to break free from the guilt that's been weighing you down so you can finally forgive yourself and move forward. Because your past mistakes, they don't define you, but your inability to forgive yourself, it does. And you deserve better. You deserve healing. And you deserve to move forward. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to do it. Hello, I am Christy. I'm a board certified nurse practitioner and health coach and also a trauma survivor. And this is Trauma Free, where I help you change your mind and change your life, just like I did. So let's get into it. If you've ever struggled to forgive yourself, it's likely because you've been carrying either guilt or shame or both. But here's the thing. They are not the same, and knowing the difference will help you move towards setting yourself free. According to psychologist Brené Brown, guilt can be productive, but shame, it's destructive. While guilt motivates us to make things right, shame convinces us that we are the problem, making it harder to heal. The difference between the two is guilt is about your actions. It's the feeling that you've done something wrong, which can encourage you to grow and make amends. An example would be you forget your friend's birthday and you feel horrible, so you may apologize and you make it up to them. However, shame, it's about your identity. It's the belief that you as a person are bad or unworthy, leading to self-criticism, avoidance, and emotional withdrawal. An example is, instead of thinking I made a mistake, shame makes you believe I am a mistake. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt can be healthy. It helps us learn and grow. Shame is toxic. It keeps us stuck in self-hatred. Guilt can be resolved through correction and self-reflection. Shame paralyzes us, convincing us we're unworthy of healing. Guilt and shame don't just affect the way you feel, they rewire your brain and shape your mental health. In fact, a major study in Psychological Bulletin found that shame is more strongly linked to depression than guilt. And external shame, feeling judged or unworthy by others, is even more damaging than internal shame, feeling bad about yourself privately. And if you've ever experienced trauma, the effects go even deeper because a study in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that guilt and shame are directly tied to PTSD symptoms. Why? Because they keep the nervous system stuck in a stress cycle, making healing even harder. So what does this mean for you? If you've been carrying guilt or shame, you're not just overthinking it. Your brain is wired to hold on to these emotions. But the good news, it's also wired for healing. You can rewire your brain. You can break free from shame. You can release the guilt that no longer serves you. And it starts with self-forgiveness. Let go of the past. Release the weight of guilt or shame and step into the peace and freedom you deserve. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop punishing yourself and start healing? Here's something you may not have realized. Guilt and shame often disguise themselves as unprocessed grief. When we feel guilt, we're not just regretting an action, we're mourning the version of ourselves that didn't make that mistake. When we carry shame, we're grieving the person we used to be before the trauma, before the regret, before the weight of the past that changed how we see ourselves. This is a form of loss, but unlike traditional grief, we don't acknowledge it. We don't talk about it. Instead, it lingers in the background, shaping our thoughts, our choices, and our self worth. Unlike losing a loved one, which the world recognizes as grief, this type of mourning is invisible. No one brings flowers for the loss of who you used to be. No one tells us to take the time to grieve the choices we regret. No one gives us permission to heal from the identity we lost along the way. But the hidden grief doesn't just disappear. It stays beneath the surface, shaping how we see ourselves, how we trust others, and how we show up in the world. And you must remember, until you recognize it, you can't heal from it. If you've been carrying guilt and shame, ask yourself, am I grieving the person I used to be? Am I holding on to regret because I haven't allowed myself to process that loss? Am I punishing myself instead of giving myself permission to heal? Because here's what you need to know. You don't have to carry this forever. You are allowed to grieve the past and move forward. You deserve to heal, not just from what happened, but from the weight of who you thought you had to be. Guilt and grief don't just affect your emotions, they take a real physical toll on your body. When left unresolved, these feelings can silently impact your health in ways you may not have even realized. When you feel guilt or shame, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone, pushing you into a constant state of fight or flight. Instead of processing and healing, your nervous system stays stuck in survival mode. Guilt also activates the brain's pain centers. Have you ever heard someone say, guilt weighs on them? It's not just a metaphor. They really feel that way. Research shows that guilt activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. That's why guilt can feel just as painful as physical injury, because your brain processes it in the same way. Additionally, chronic grief and guilt can weaken your immune system. Long-term guilt and unresolved grief have been linked to an increase in inflammation, a process where your immune system overacts as if fighting off an infection. While inflammation is meant to heal the body, when it becomes chronic, it does the opposite. It weakens immunity and increases the rise of autoimmune diseases, heart conditions, and even depression. So what all this means is your emotions don't just live in your mind, they live in your body too. If you've been carrying guilt or grief, know that it's not just affecting your thoughts, it's affecting your health. But here's the good news, you can break free. Practicing self-forgiveness can lower cortisol levels. Releasing guilt rewires your brain for healing, and processing grief strengthens your immune system rather than depleting it. Your body wants to heal. The question is, will you let it? Guilt and shame don't just affect your thoughts, they reshape the way you experience life. These emotions can weigh you down, distort your thinking, and even change your behavior, making healing feel impossible. Here's how they can show up. Guilt keeps us trapped in an endless loop of sadness, anger, anxiety, and regret. We replay past mistakes, wishing we could change them, but instead of finding solutions, we sink deeper into self-blame. When guilt takes over, it's hard to focus on anything else. Racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, and memory issues become common. The brain is so overloaded with what ifs that it struggles to stay in the present. Also, guilt has a sneaky way of convincing us that we're unworthy of love, happiness, or even basic self-care. It can cause us to withdraw from social activities, avoid loved ones, and neglect our physical and mental well-being. You have to acknowledge your emotions instead of suppressing them. Give yourself permission to move forward, not just look back. And remember, you are not your mistakes, you are your growth. There is a hidden cost of carrying guilt, and to understand how deep this goes, let's look at some real data. A Harvard University study on self-forgiveness found that people who struggle with guilt often avoid situations that remind them of their past mistakes. This avoidance not only increases anxiety and depression, but also keeps them from opportunities for growth and healing. This means that guilt doesn't just hold us back emotionally, it keeps us from living fully. It creates a cycle of self punishment where we don't allow ourselves to move forward because we believe we don't deserve to. If you're carrying guilt and shame, it's time to release it, not because what happened doesn't matter, but because you matter more. Healing starts with recognition. Acknowledge the grief you feel for who you used to be, but don't stay stuck there. Shift your perspective. Instead of seeing your past as a weight, see it as a lesson and give yourself permission to heal. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself from the chains of the past. Your past doesn't define you, but the way you choose to move forward will. Here's a hard truth. Guilt is an illusion that tricks us into believing we could have controlled the past. It whispers lies, making us believe that if we had just done something different, we could have prevented our pain. We get stuck in a cycle of what ifs and self blame. If only I had done this differently. If only I had been stronger. If only I had seen the warning signs. But the reality is, you were doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. Holding on to guilt isn't protecting you, it's keeping you trapped in the past, distracting you from the real work of healing. So, why do we hold on to guilt so tightly? Guilt makes us believe that punishing ourselves will somehow right the wrongs of the past, but in reality, it does the opposite. It keeps us emotionally stuck. This can lead to toxic self blame, where we feel undeserving of healing or happiness. Moreover, a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that guilt and shame activate the brain's pain centers, the same areas that light up when we experience physical pain. That means every time we replay a past mistake, our brains react as if we are experiencing it all over again. This is why guilt feels so heavy. It's not just a feeling, it's a physiological response that keeps your nervous system in survival mode. People who struggle with guilt often avoid situations that remind them of their past mistakes, which limit their ability to grow. And physical health consequences. To demonstrate, the Journal of Behavioral Medicine found that chronic guilt has been linked to increased cortisol levels, which can weaken the immune system, raise blood pressure, and contribute to long-term stress-related illnesses. Holding on to guilt won't change the past, but it will steal your future. Instead of replaying what you should have done, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to grow? Would I blame someone else as harshly as I blame myself? Because here's what's important to remember. Guilt is not proof of your goodness. Your actions moving forward are. Forgiveness isn't saying the past didn't happen. It's saying I will no longer allow the past to control me. So today, make the choice. Release the illusion that guilt makes you a better person. Accept that you deserve healing. And step into the present because that's where your future begins. Now let's get into the steps to forgiving yourself. Step 1. Recognize that guilt and shame are keeping you stuck. You can't heal from what you refuse to acknowledge. If you've been carrying guilt like a weight on your shoulders, if shame has been whispering that you don't deserve to move forward, then it's time to face it. Because here's the truth. Ignoring it won't make it disappear. Punishing yourself won't change the past. But acknowledging it is the first step towards freedom. I had to learn this the hard way. For years, I carried the weight of past regrets. But what finally set me free was recognizing the vital role I play in my own life, and more importantly, deciding who and what I allow into my presence. So today, I want you to do the same. Stop running from your emotions. Don't deny them. Don't suppress them. Instead, allow yourself to feel them without judgment. According to Dr. Brene Brown, shame thrives in secrecy. The more you hold on to it, the more power it has over you. That means the longer you avoid confronting your guilt, the more control it has over your mind, body, and emotions. But once you bring it into the light, that's when healing begins. Forgiving yourself starts with one key thing, taking responsibility, but not in the way you may think. Taking responsibility does not mean beating yourself up endlessly for past mistakes. dwelling on things you can't change, blaming yourself for things beyond your control. Taking responsibility does mean acknowledging your actions honestly, learning from your experiences, and choosing to grow instead of staying stuck in guilt. Ask yourself, what is one thing I've been holding against myself? How has it affected my life? Write it down, say it out loud, let it exist outside of your mind because healing starts with recognition. According to the American Psychological Association, 80% of people experience persistent self blame for past mistakes. And here's what's even more shocking: holding on to guilt isn't just emotional, it literally changes your brain. Your guilt isn't just in your mind, it's affecting your body. Because guilt and shame trigger your nervous system, keeping you in fight or flight mode. They increase cortisol, the stress hormone, leading to anxiety and depression. And they weaken your immune system, leaving you more vulnerable to illnesses. Also, a study from the University of Pittsburgh found that chronic guilt and shame can lead to long-term health problems, including high blood pressure, heart disease, and autoimmune disorders, indicating the body definitely keeps the score. And are we seeing a trend here? So if you've been feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or stuck, it's not just in your head. Your body is carrying the weight of what your mind refuses to release. Let's be real. You can't change the past, but what you can change is how you carry it. Ask yourself, am I punishing myself for something I cannot change? If the answer is yes, then it's time to let it go. Because growth begins when guilt ends. Start saying this to yourself: I am not my past. I am worthy of healing. I choose to move forward because you deserve to be free. But first, you have to set yourself free. And step 2, separate your actions from your identity. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I messed up, so I must be a bad person, I want you to pause for a second because that is not the truth. Your actions, they do not define your worth. Instead of asking, why did I do this? Shift your thinking to, what did I learn? How can I grow from this? How would I respond if a loved one made this mistake? This simple shift in thinking can change everything. You have to treat yourself with kindness and compassion. People who practice self-compassion are less likely to dwell on past mistakes, more motivated to improve, and more resilient in the face of setbacks. Not to mention, a study from the University of California, Berkeley found that people who actively practice self-compassion have lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and higher levels of oxytocin, the love hormone, which promotes emotional healing and connection. That means forgiving yourself doesn't let you off the hook. It actually makes you stronger. You have to learn from your mistakes instead of punishing yourself. Too often we trap ourselves in guilt by saying, I made a mistake, so I'm a bad person. But let's reframe that. I made a mistake and I'm learning from it. See the difference? One keeps you stuck, the other moves you forward. When you choose self-compassion, your brain learns to bounce back faster with less emotional damage. And research in neuroplasticity confirms the brain has the ability to rewire itself through repetition, which means the more you practice self-forgiveness, the easier it becomes for your brain to shift from shame to self-acceptance. Your words matter and your thoughts matter. So instead of asking, why did I do that? This keeps you stuck in shame. Ask yourself, what did I learn? This moves you forward. Your mistakes are moments, not your identity. The lesson is what transforms you. I am not defined by my past mistakes. I am defined by my ability to learn, grow, and heal. And guess what? So are you. Step 3, make amends if possible, then let it go. If you can make things right, do it. If you can't, then it's time to release it. Because carrying the past like a burden on your back won't undo what happened, but forgiving yourself, that will change your future. It's easy to get trapped in if only thinking. If only I had done things differently. If only I could go back and fix it. If only I hadn't made that choice. But here's the reality: the past is unchangeable and the future is unwritten. So instead of dwelling on what's already done, focus on what you can do now to grow from the experience. Apologizing isn't just about making things right with others, it's about making things right within yourself. And here's the truth: you don't need permission for others to forgive yourself. If your mistake hurt someone else, apologize if possible. Take responsibility for your actions. If you can't reach out, find a way to release it: a letter, a symbolic act, or inner reflection. If you hurt yourself, offer yourself the same compassion you'd offer a loved one. Sometimes the hardest apologies to make are the ones we owe ourselves. What if, instead of seeing your past mistakes as something that defines you, you saw it as something that grew you? At that time in your life, you did the best you could do with what you knew. You are no longer that person, and the obstacle that once blocked your happiness is now the bridge to your wisdom. So try this. Write a letter to yourself or someone else, even if you never send it, because when you release the weight from your hands, your mind will follow. Acknowledge what happened, apologize to yourself, and release the guilt. Then destroy it, burn it, rip it, flush it, or bury it, whatever feels right for you. The more you replay the past, the harder it is to move forward. But the good news: you have the power to break the cycle right now. Remember, holding on to the past won't change it, but forgiving yourself, that changes everything. Step 4. Treat yourself how you treat a friend. If you've ever found yourself replaying your mistakes over and over, criticizing yourself for things you should have done differently, stop for a moment and ask yourself, would I ever speak to my best friend the way I speak to myself? If the answer is no, then it's time to change the narrative. Because the truth is, you are not the person you once were. You have grown. You no longer resonate with the old version of yourself. Self-forgiveness isn't about making excuses. It's about recognizing that you are human. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has regrets. And everyone has moments they wish they could change. But you are still worthy of love, kindness, and forgiveness, just like anyone else. I can recall many times in my life when I would make excuses for the harmful actions of other people and even forgive them, but hold myself to a different standard, which would cause me to feel bad about myself until one day I recognized the pattern. It dawned on me that I was the one who needed my forgiveness for allowing myself to be exposed to manipulative people that preyed on my kindness. So I made a decision. From that moment on, I chose to put myself first, because self-forgiveness isn't selfish, it's essential. Studies from UCLA's Mindfulness Center found that practicing self-compassion increases serotonin and dopamine, the very same brain chemicals that regulate happiness, self-worth, and emotional resilience. When you practice self-forgiveness, your brain physically rewires itself. You retrain your neural pathways to support healing rather than reinforcing shame. That means the more you show yourself kindness, the easier it becomes. The more you forgive yourself, the more peace you create in your life. And the more you release the past, the more space you have to embrace your future. To sum it up, the way you talk to yourself literally shapes your mental health. So the next time negative self-talk creeps in, stop and ask yourself, would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, rewrite the script. Speak to yourself with the kindness you deserve, because healing begins with the way you talk to yourself. Step 5. Set boundaries and accept that healing is a process. Healing isn't just about letting go of guilt. It's about ensuring you don't keep walking into the same patterns that caused the pain in the first place. This means setting boundaries, protecting your peace, and recognizing that healing is a journey, not a single moment. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. If certain people, situations, or habits are keeping you stuck in cycles of guilt, self-doubt, or emotional pain, It's time to set boundaries. If certain people, even family members, are constantly triggering your past wounds, create space for yourself. If situations keep pulling you back into old habits, choose differently. If you find yourself making the same mistakes, learn from them. This isn't about cutting people off in anger, it's about choosing yourself in love. Setting boundaries might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's the first step in taking back control over your life and emotional well being. I know how hard this is. I've had to do it myself. And let me tell you, it's one of the most difficult things you'll ever do, but it's also one of the most necessary for your peace of mind and your mental health. Your peace is your responsibility. Prioritize it. Don't let others drain your energy or keep you stuck in a cycle of emotional turmoil. Forgiveness isn't a switch you just flip, it's a daily practice. Some days it will feel easy, and other days the guilt might try to creep back in, and that's normal. Forgive yourself for feeling guilty. Forgive yourself for feeling powerless. Forgive yourself for not knowing then what you know now. And most importantly, remind yourself every day, I am not my past. I am allowed to grow, heal, and move forward. Healing takes time, and some days will feel harder than others, but that's okay. It's important to realize that neuroplasticity research shows that our brains have the ability to restructure and rewire themselves through repetition. This means that every time you practice self forgiveness, you are literally changing the way your brain processes guilt and shame. The brain forms new neural pathways through consistent self compassion, not instant resolution. The more you practice self forgiveness, the easier it becomes. Your brain can literally rewire itself to release guilt and embrace growth. Additionally, a Stanford University study found that people who actively practice self forgiveness experience lower levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, and higher levels of emotional resilience. So, the more you forgive yourself, the healthier and stronger you become. Healing doesn't happen overnight, it happens step by step, day by day, decision by decision. The next time guilt tries to pull you back, remind yourself, this is part of the process. I choose to keep moving forward because healing isn't about how fast you go. It's about choosing not to stop. And that choice, that's where your power is. So try these daily healing practices that prioritize boundaries and self-forgiveness. Start each day with the affirmation of self-compassion, like I am worthy of peace, I forgive myself, and I choose healing today. Identify your boundaries for the day, whether it's limiting time with certain people or reframing situations that typically trigger your guilt. Write them down as a reminder to yourself. End each day by reflecting on your progress and ask yourself, what was one thing I did today to protect my peace? Release the past. At the end of each week, write down one mistake you're still holding on to and reframe it. See how you've grown and how it no longer defines you. Remember, healing is not a straight path, and some days will be harder than others, but every step forward, no matter how small, is progress, and you are moving in the right direction. The choice is yours. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. You are worthy of healing. Your past mistakes do not define you. Your trauma does not define you. Your guilt does not define you. But the decision to let go and move forward, that will. You have the power to rewrite your story. I believe in you, but now it's time for you to believe in yourself. Because you can release the shame. Carrying it won't change the past. It will only keep you trapped in it. Learn the lesson. Every mistake, every regret, every painful moment was a teacher, not a life sentence. Step into your power. Your future is waiting, but you can't step into it while clinging to the past. The truth is, you deserve peace. You deserve freedom. I know this is hard to hear, but if you continue to hold on to guilt, shame, and fear, it's not the past keeping you stuck. It's you. And I say that with love because I've been there too. Self-forgiveness, it activates the soothing system, releasing oxytocin and serotonin, the very chemicals that promote healing and emotional safety. Which means the moment you choose self-compassion over guilt, you biologically shift your brain from suffering to healing. You literally begin to rewire your mind for growth. The only thing standing in the way is the story you keep telling yourself. So rewrite it. Let go. Set yourself free. Because the past cannot hold you back unless you let it. Your healing, it starts the moment you decide you're worthy of it. And you are. You deserve better. And the power to choose it is already inside you. You are the one who can set yourself free. So take the first step now.